Join 14,000 SCAR certified members in Bermuda, and you can help reduce the risk of childhood sexual abuse. Become an advocate and a voice for our children. Get trained, get certified. We offer community and private sessions. Visit scarsbermuda.com to register for training. You'll also find valuable information and resources on our website. Visit scarsbermuda.com. Get certified today. SCARS, saving children and revealing secrets.
Welcome to SCARS Survivor Hour. Thank you for joining us. SCARS, which stands for Saving Children and Revealing Secrets, is a 1-hour cable TV show where silence is broken, awareness is raised, and the topic of child sexual abuse is discussed from the lens of a survivor. Debbie Ray Rivers, a survivor and a passionate advocate for child protection and prevention, is the founder of SCARS, a Bermuda nonprofit whose mission is to reduce the risk of child sexual abuse and to be an advocate and voice for children who have been sexually molested, as well as their affected family. On set with Debbie is Dr. Alicia Hancock, a clinical psychologist with decades of experience in child sexual abuse and a valued SCARS board member. Child sexual abuse thrives in silence, betrayal, and deception. SCARS brings these difficult and necessary conversations into the light. Through powerful conversations with industry experts, advocates, and voices that matter, it challenges us all to think differently, act responsibly, and help survivors know that they are not alone. And now, here's your host, Debbie Ray Rivers.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. You know, in doing this work for close to 15 years, we've seen what happens when we bring light to the darkness of child sexual abuse. Over the past 14 and a half years, SCARS has educated over 14,500 adults in our Bermuda community, using what we believe to be the most effective training ever created by an organization in the United States called Darkness to Light. When we educate adults, we not only create the power to prevent child sexual abuse, but we also help survivors understand that the trauma that they endured when they were a child was not their fault, and they did not cause it. Child sexual abuse can be the deepest pain because it is inflicted early and because it involves people who are trusted by the child and their family. It could even be family members. But what we've learned is that some survivors of child sexual abuse manage their pain through substance abuse. And tonight, we will bring light to the link that we don't often talk about, the link between childhood trauma and addiction. Now, I want to say that it does not mean that every survivor of child sexual abuse develops addiction. And it also does not mean that everyone with addiction was sexually abused as a child. That's really important to make that difference. But for those who have been sexually molested and suffer with addiction, what happened to you was not your fault. And the way you cope is understandable. You deserve support and healing. And we hope this show sheds light on the darkness of your lived experience and the help that you so deserve. Dr. Hancock and I are joined this evening by two subject matter experts in addiction. I want to introduce you to Camille Laval. Camille is a clinical manager at Pathways Bermuda. And Pathways is a Bermuda nonprofit addiction treatment provider dedicated to providing permanent paths to healing for those individuals and their families in our community whose lives have been devastated by addiction. And we're grateful for their work. Also at our table, I'm excited also, this evening is Martha Tumlin. As a licensed independent social worker clinical practice, Martha has contributed to Darkness to Light's leadership, mission, curriculum, and trainings since the organization was founded in 2000. She serves as a certifying instructor, content specialist, and subject matter interviewer. Martha is also a retired certified master addictions counselor with 30 years of clinical experience, specializing in addictive illness, disorders, and family systems dynamics. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here. Camille, we're excited to have you at our table.
Thank you so much.
We thank you for your valuable work in our community, Pathways Bermuda. Tell our audience all about it, all about the most important work that you do in this community.
Well, thank you so much. That's such a beautiful introduction. Just a little bit about Pathways Bermuda. We've actually been established for the past 18 years. Pathways Bermuda has gone through a number of different transitions, and we were known most, I think, earlier in the years as Caron Bermuda. So as a strategic partner of Caron, which is an overseas residential facility, overseas treatment facility in the United States. And then through, some strategic design and, really an emphasis on focusing more on the Bermuda community and how we can further reach into the community, we transitioned into Pathways Bermuda. So we still have those lovely working relationships overseas. And under the leadership of Gita Blakeney Soltis,
I love that.
Yes, she has done amazing work over the past 18 years. Yes. So right now, the core team is myself as the clinical manager and lead counselor, Rakisha Beans as our program administrator and also a counselor, and Gita. And then we have some consultants on our team. So I think the most important thing to recognize is that we are a nonprofit, we're a charitable organization, and what we're looking to do is really serve the Bermuda community through trauma-informed care, specifically for individuals and family members. More specifically, individuals that are looking to explore where they are along the substance use disorder spectrum. So we recognize that there are ripple effects, not just from the substance abuse or the substance use, but how that trickles into the family. So something that we've really emphasized in the last year is ensuring that trauma-informed care for both individuals and family members.
And their affected family.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's wonderful. And thank you so much for the important work that you do in our community. We know that this show is about, the link between the trauma from child sexual abuse and substance abuse, whether later in life, right? If they're sexually abused as a little one. From your experience, how often do you see that link?
As uncomfortable and as unfortunate as it may be to recognize, it's actually quite common. There's definitely a quite insidious subculture of child sexual abuse, but also, and I think equally as damaging, the secrecy around it, right? The desire to protect family name or to protect individuals in families. So many times we see it as, an experience that someone has had, but based on, the family roles or the family rules or the family culture, not really something that people can express and move beyond. And it ends up popping out or leaking out in other ways. And one of those ways is an addiction. Yeah. So it's a quite common background feature of many of the clients that I've worked with.
Right. Yeah. That's why the work that we do in Bermuda at SCARS is so important in terms of prevention and using the educational tool that we use to prevent it. So
absolutely.
So that children can grow up, like we said in the introduction, that's what they deserve, to be protected and safe, right?
Absolutely.
So that we can avoid this. Also sitting at our table is Martha. Martha and I go back many, many years. We've been doing this work for close to 15 years. I met her, right at the beginning. She is a huge support to not only me personally, but also to SCARS and to the Darkness to Light organization. And so, Martha, I just love the fact that that this organization that you're affiliated with, and you're a trained facilitator, and you've done so much work with, and an interviewer, and in terms of the curriculums. But I am just so grateful that they called it that, because child sexual abuse is one of the most silent crimes. And it thrives in secrecy, we know that, and shame, which is unfounded shame for our survivors. But when we bring this into the light, everything shifts. Like, it was such an amazing name for whoever came up with it. I mean, we are replacing secrecy with understanding. And that's why the work of SCARS in our community is so important. And that's why the curriculum, Stewards of Children, which Darkness to Light creates, has shifted behaviors in Bermuda. And so talk to us a little bit about your work with not only as all the the skills and the wisdom that you have around being an addiction counselor, but also your work with Darkness to Light. Just briefly tell us about that.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation with each of you. It's a blessing for me to have an opportunity to work with a team like you guys. And I compliment your work in addictions and your work in child sexual abuse prevention and all the rest of the stuff that you do as well. I spent 30 years of my career working in addictions, and I was eligible for retirement and did because I had a young child at home. And so I wanted to retire, and that coincided with the Stewards of Children curriculum being born. Our Darkness to Light organization in South Carolina began as a result of a community crisis around child sexual abuse that occurred in our community. And as that blew up our community and went on for years in terms of the controversy that it created and the different litigation issues, more and more people came forward to say they had been victims of that, and who are now adults. And with that in mind, there were some child activists in my community that came forward and said, we got to do something about this. It's not okay. People don't understand what child sexual abuse is about. And so they put together a community conference for the community, for survivors, and brought in Marilyn Vanderveer, who was Miss America in 1958, who in her 40s came out about her child sexual abuse. So they brought her across the country to be the keynote speaker at that conference, which occurred for many years. It was an annual conference. At that conference, or as they were planning that conference, one of the several women that were on the leadership committee in the planning had written a poem in her personal journal, and it was called From Darkness to Light.
Wow.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And they decided that needed to be the name of the conferences. So fast forward in a few years, one of those individuals also took the ball and ran with it. She felt called to establish a nonprofit organization, wrote a grant, and did so in 2000. And so Darkness Light as an organization was born in 2000. As a result, as a response to a horrible community crisis that empowered them to action. And what I've learned is it very much like the Child Sexual Abuse Initiative here in Bermuda. So our origin is a cousin to the origin of SCARS. So we resonate in many ways because people cared. Yes. It's because people said it's not okay, we know better, we're running these children advocacy committees for what happens afterwards. What do we need to do before? Right. And so they went to work on that. I knew some of these folks, and they happened to be colleagues of mine at the university, and they would drop by and talk about it. So I just happened to be a wingman. And I just happened to be someone that had the privilege of witnessing something unbelievable that had never happened before become an organization. Darkness to Light now has, Stewards of Children was born in 2004. As a result of evaluating the educational efforts that Darkness to Light had been doing. Darkness to Light's mission from day one for 25 years through today is always and will always be to develop state-of-the-art educational information and materials that can educate all adults on how to prevent, recognize, and react responsibly to child sexual abuse. That's what they do, and they do it well.
They do it well.
Everything we crank out, and once again, I'm just someone that responds when they ask. I'm a facilitator. I'm an instructor. A therapist without a job is dangerous. So when I retired, I needed something to put my energy into, and Stewards of Children was born in 2004.
Yeah.
Because what they learned from prior educational media initiatives and other educational initiatives that they put out, their written material, we partnered with the National Crime Victim Center, which is in my town, and they evaluated to the community, see are people learning things. And what they learned, folks were reading the materials, they were watching some of the educational information presented media-wise, and they were remembering information, they were changing their attitudes, but they were not taking action. So Darkness Light went back to the drawing board. They partnered with a specialist in developing docu-trainings, and the Stewards of Children training was born in 2004 as a result of their research and the feedback from consumers in the community. And since it was born in 2004, we upgraded every 8 to 9 years, so we have state-of-the-art data around prevalence and consequences. The Stewards of Children training is based on 5 steps to prevent, recognize, and react responsibly to child sexual abuse. So every 8 to 9 years, we reevaluate everything, and we redo the whole thing.
Yes.
What are lessons learned since then about adult education? What's the best delivery method? What's the best, the most updated information about prevalence and consequences of child sexual abuse? And then what's the best delivery method?
Yeah.
And so we rolled out Stewards 2 in 2013. Then in 2023, we rolled out the current version of Stewards. So we're going to always stay in a position of being current. And what I'm so excited about with this version, it's trauma-informed. Because over these years, we've learned about trauma-informed.
Absolutely.
And our curriculum director had information to guide. She's got her PhD in curriculum development. And so she guided it. All the music was researched to be what was considered trauma-informed music.
Yeah, and can I say that's what SCARS delivers to our Bermuda community now. We're on our 3rd version since we started this organization. Marilyn Vanderburg was in the first DVD that we put into a machine and presented to our community in May 2012. And so we just go along with whatever Dr. Slide has. We're like, and I just want to say, it does change attitudes and behaviors.
It does.
We, at our SCARS team, has seen the change in this community of what happens when you educate a community in prevention. It works. It works. And you know, we are grateful for this partnership, for sure.
And what Darkness Light continues to do is bring in evaluators. What are we doing now? What's the outcome? And so we're considered research informed by the official people that apply the labels to all that.
Yes, and I want to give a plug to our Bermuda community. You see that award right there? We were presented with this Tipping Point Award. It was a theory written by Malcolm Gladwell many years ago, that if you can affect 5% of a given population in a certain behavior, it can shift. You can change it. And we saw it in Bermuda. We saw it, the SCARS team saw that shift after we had trained 5% of our adult community. We saw the shift. We saw more people coming into our room. We saw youth serving organizations implementing policies, you know, parents talking to it, more survivors being able to share their secret. And so that tipping point works, affecting 5%. And we were the first country in the world to hit that. So be proud.
You're the only country in the world that has hit it, and including the United States. If you break it down into states, we don't have a state that's done that.
Be proud.
You are the flagship of what putting the rubber to the road means, which is we are training the community, they're responding, they're coming back for more, and we are changing attitudes, actions, and behaviors to better protect children here. I've witnessed it when I was here in 2018, as you've heard me say. I got off the plane, and the guy that checked my passport, I said, well, I'm here with SCARS. You ever heard of it? He said, yeah, I've been through the training.
Yeah.
I won't go into my story, but everywhere I went during my 8 days here, I asked whoever was in front of me, whether I sat on the bus, and I asked the bus driver, and he said, yeah, I've been through it. The people sitting around me on the bus said, yeah, we know about that. We've been through it. The clerks in the stores, the waitresses, the stewardess, I mean, my husband just kept rolling his eyes at me. but everybody said, oh, yeah, we know STARS.
Yeah.
We've been through it.
That means we have our eyes and ears on the precious innocence of this country. And that is so important. People are aware now. And that's what's the most important. It's, to be honest, it's not about SCARS. It's about the children of Bermuda.
Absolutely.
And we need to make sure that prevention is always at the forefront of everybody's mind. I mean, how can early intervention change that path? How can it change that path of what we're talking about now when it comes to addiction, right?
So I'm so grateful that you asked that, because I think there are so many anxieties and fears that exist around this, right? I don't want to get too far into, because I have mentioned earlier, this is kind of a soapbox of mine, but there is a researcher, I believe he's a medical doctor as well, and quite respected in the field of addictions, Dr. Gabor Mate. Yeah. I know,
Dr.
right?
Mate.
I just like,
I've sat with him in conferences.
don't
He's awesome.
tell me that.
He's awesome. If I was younger, I would be in Canada working with him.
So we understand, right?
He's awesome.
And one of the things that he says that I've said several times, and I've seen the way it lands with people, so I'm so grateful that I get to say it on this platform. one of the things that he identifies is that trauma experiences are twofold, or they have different pieces, and each piece is important. You have the trauma event, but then you also have what happens right after that, right? And he goes on to reiterate that while an event can be traumatizing, legitimately, if someone doesn't have someone that they can connect with immediately after that event, there's a secondary trauma. And what really intensifies is that desire or that need that somebody feels to self-preserve and self-soothe post a trauma event, as opposed to being able to co-regulate with someone or to be able to connect with someone post-trauma. So what I tell people is the rupture is important, but the repair is very important. And as I've, without getting into it, one of the degrees that I'm working on is trauma. Traumatology specifically. And one of the things that we're learning about is specifically the nervous system portion of it, right? And what we're recognizing is that the earlier that high quality intervention can be done post a trauma event, the better chances someone stands in coping well with and bringing resolution to some of those trauma experiences. So I think it's so valuable that we focus on prevention, because prevention is always going to be the preference, right?
Yes.
But also having very strategic plans for what the earliest interventions look like.
Yes.
From parents to doctors to nurses to teachers to those people that have those early interventions.
Yes.
That's key.
Yes.
That's absolutely key.
I was sitting here thinking, and I concur with everything you're saying. I'm tingling inside listening to this. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Of course.
If you think of any other traumatic injury, if you fall and break your arm, if you're in a car wreck, if you fall down the steps, the sooner you get to the emergency room and get help, the better off the healing will be for that injury. And if it's postponed, I'm okay, I didn't break anything, but you can't get out of bed the next morning. By the time you get there to the ER, there's swelling, there's the other things, and you've been walking on that leg or using that whatever, and it's created more injuries.
Yeah.
So like most other kind of trauma events, with emotional child sexual abuse trauma, the earlier the child tells, hopefully they're believed, and not only believed, but proper help is sought. Trauma-informed care is put into play for the well-being of that child and the family.
Absolutely.
Because child sexual abuse is a trauma for the family too, for the caretakers, the parents, the children, the brothers and sisters. Everybody needs a chance to identify and respond to how that event or events, a series of events, has affected their family.
Yes.
And they need air to breathe and to understand what context to put that in. It isn't about the well-being of it isn't about the worth of the person. It's about what happened to them.
Absolutely.
To separate the deed from the doer and get everybody help. I love what you're saying about family systems, because my specialty as an addictions counselor was families.
Okay.
And so I worked a lot with the families and family programs.
And I just want to piggyback off something you said, which I think is really, really powerful. We talked about the rupture and the repair. And not just the intervention, but this is where I like to speak a little bit to family culture that exists outside of child sexual abuse, just for a second, in the sense of, do families have a culture within their family unit or their family system to say that when scary things happen, when uncomfortable things happen, you can come to me?
Yes.
Because sometimes there exists separation between children and their parents in terms of the attunement and attachment and safety that perpetuate the idea that the child has to cope with this in isolation. And that belief is traumatizing in and of itself. So when you have that relational rupture, and then you have a trauma event, and then you have lack of response, we're actually dealing with 3 different features.
The child doesn't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
So they shut down.
Exactly.
And it's worse if there's multi-generational trauma, because the family has adapted.
Say more about that.
Well, when there's multi-generational trauma, there's trauma, beyond the current children. So there's trauma with parents, there's trauma with grandparents, and so when parents and grandparents didn't get the help or support that they needed, they learn to adapt. And when survivors learn to adapt, there's a sense, they develop a sense that everything's fine. And so therefore, when the younger children then experience trauma, then, in their minds, well, they'll be fine because I was fine, right? Because they've learned to adapt to that style of the lifestyle. Yeah.
And we know we have a lot of adult survivors in our community.
Absolutely.
From, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We were not talking about child sexual abuse years ago. And this has wakened a lot of people's pain from their own childhood trauma that nobody was talking about intervention back then, or trauma, informed responses. Like, it was like, get over it, you'll be fine, wipe yourself off and let's go. But when it comes to the inside of a child hurting, it's not easy to do, right?
And I think that multi-generational piece is so valuable, which is why what SCARS is doing is so valuable, right? I'm a firm believer, and I see this a lot in the addictions counseling work. I don't want to say can't, I don't like absolute terms, but it's very unlikely that a parent is going to be able to teach a skill that they don't have.
Exactly.
So when we expect children to function beyond their parents' functioning, how realistic is that, right?
True.
So, a lot of our prevention work is supporting adults with the skills of communication, with the skills of developing the ability to be vulnerable, the distress tolerance. Like, a lot of those skills are actually required so that the children can be exposed to what modeling those skills look like, so that they can in turn learn those skills.
Yeah.
Well, especially when parents, unfortunately, many times believe that they have to fix it.
Yes.
And so then they, then there's a propensity to just not address it, because if I don't know how to fix it, then there's no point in addressing it with the child, versus, when you get support through therapy or through resources that can help you with communication and how and what to say, and what the expectation should be, then it feels a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's, I can imagine that's such a big barrier, right?
Yeah.
Because, even sitting amongst ourselves, I think that we can, we have a collective understanding of what a therapeutic response is to trauma, or what a medical response to a trauma incident may be. But for family members that don't understand the purpose or value or role of therapeutic responses to trauma incidents, it's kind of like, well, if you don't have to go to the hospital, and if you don't need medication, if nothing's broken, if I can't see it, then what do I actually do?
Yeah, and sexual abuse is on the inside.
Exactly,
that pain is on the inside. It's not on the outside.
Internalized,
Yes.
and it leaks out into different aspects of life. How I see the world, how I see myself, how I see other people.
And people believe that they can ignore it and it'll
Go
go away, or it just won't bother me. It won't affect me. And there are people that can function with trauma, but that's on a practical level. That's not on the emotional level. That's not on the interactional level.
And I really like the way that you created the discrepancy between functional versus, what was the word that you, practical.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think a lot of times, people look like they function, but when we actually dig a little bit deeper into that, we see.
When you look at their relationships with people, many times, because that requires emotional connection, and many survivors struggle to regain the ability to emotionally connect with anybody.
Well,
It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's trust. Trust is a huge part of child sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Because the people who they should have trusted, there's been betrayal. So then you go through as a survivor, well, who can I trust? So I might as well not say anything, because they're not going to understand. I don't know if I can trust them with this. So that's a huge part of it. If we start to bring in the addictive response, and some people that may go down that road later, let's talk about that a little bit, and some of those coping mechanisms. And my heart is so much when it comes to addiction and understanding that, learning that we didn't cause it, we can't change it, we can't cure it, that's them. It's really hard to wrap yourself around that especially when you don't have the power to do that, right? And that's hard with family members of
Absolutely.
those that are struggling.
And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm grateful that Pathways has kind of taken the direction that we've taken. Admittedly, I've been in this role. It was a year yesterday.
It's amazing.
Happy
anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy work anniversary.
Yes.
Career anniversary.
And one of the things that I absolutely love is that we have a team that has established a lot of therapeutic trust between ourselves, a lot of clinical trust, organizational trust. And one of the things that we've really focused on is a trauma-informed environment. And I know that we kind of floated that word out there. But just for clarity, my understanding or my application of trauma-informed basically rests in the knowledge that when people experience trauma, a number of different changes happen, right? Physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. We have no idea what people's experiences are when they walk through our door. So we work under the pretense that everyone has experienced some degree of trauma. Now, we could talk about big T traumas or little T traumas, right? The big T traumas are like the accidents and the major sexual assaults and the things that feel very big and obvious. But then you also have the little T traumas, which are the chronic, challenges in relationships or, children that have experienced neglect or maybe being raised by a parent that has an addiction or a mental health concern that interrupted the way that they showed up. So we kind of have those types of traumas. Everybody at some point has experienced something, right? So we have created both an environment and organizational style and programmatic features that take into consideration the likelihood that people have been have experienced trauma and is designed around that. So we have been informed through our understanding of the way that trauma changes people or changes the way that they see the world, the way they experience life, and built an environment around that. The reason why this is crucial, and this taps into both the addiction and the trauma recovery piece, is that when we look at things like coping with trauma through substance use behavior, a lot of how we see it is things like nervous system regulation. So the nervous system plays a very large role in how we experience and interpret the world around us. Basically, it's kind of like our thermometer, right? It tells us when things are too hot, too cold, or just right. And when we experience trauma, the thermostat gets set slightly off kilter. So when we're exposed to substances, we can begin to develop relationships with them that we didn't expect and we didn't experience, which is why addiction doesn't discriminate, right? It knows no race, color, creed, sexual orientation, gender expression, religion, anything like that.
Yeah.
So once again, using this trauma-informed approach, we're able to do our best to try to encourage a person's thermometer to be as much as at baseline as possible so that we can do that therapeutic work with them.
That's amazing. I feel for people who have been sexually abused and then suffer with addiction, because there's so much shame around child sexual abuse. But there's also shame around addiction.
Yeah.
And so they're dealing with this double shame.
Yeah.
I mean, my heart just goes out because they're already dealing with something that has kept them quiet, that they felt they couldn't tell, that they heard that it was their fault, and maybe told and weren't believed. And then they go down this road of whatever they can do to cope. And then that shame comes on because, they're shameful about what they're using to make them feel better temporarily, but make them feel better, right?
And they're even more powerless.
And they're even more powerless.
That's another level of powerlessness.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because that hurts my heart.
We're all issued here, every human being landed on this earth as a bio, psycho, social, spiritual, relational little glob, okay, baby. We were issued program with all that as our potential to grow biologically, physically, to grow emotionally, to grow spiritually, to live up to our highest potential. And that little baby, each of us when we were little babies, all of us in the room, we've had the experiences we've had, as children, as adolescents, in our young adult life up until today. And we've been influenced by what was around us, by the well-being of our individual families, our communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of like that dance that's done between the individual little one, baby, and their environment and the folks that care for them and the well-being of the family, of the extended family, the neighborhood, the schools, the town, the state, the country. The well-being and health of that all does a dance together for that one little baby that's born for each of us when we came into the world. And along the way, as you well said, we hit bumps in the road. Not every no parent's perfect. Right. No community's perfect.
Absolutely.
No school's perfect. But we do the best we can. And it's when we have the structures in place, as you were saying, that allow us to embrace something that's not okay, to talk about it. Breaking the secret is the big thing. Breaking the secret is the opening to growth.
Revealing the secret.
Revealing the secrets is the
save
open,
those children.
is the entree to embracing the pain and getting help to do so in a way that the pain heals. And I used to share with my clients and with myself, when we get a wound, when the kid falls on the bicycle and has a asphalt in their arm, you got to debris the wound. And if you don't debris the wound, the skin will grow over it, cover it up, and we move on. But what's left in that little wound is going to get infected. And it ain't going to go away. And so by talking about what happened, when I bump my knee, I go tell mama, and she's going to put something on there and put a Band-Aid on it, and it gets okay. It's like when the child can talk about what has happened, whether it's child sexual abuse or anything else, bullying, the things that happen to our children, when we can talk about it and have a safe person. And it may or may not be family. It may be a sister, a brother, an aunt, an uncle, a coach, a teacher, whoever, a Sunday school leader, whoever, next door neighbor, my best friend's mama, my best friend's big sister, whoever.
Parent.
Yeah. And when my daughter was growing up, I'd say, Sarah, if something happened to you and you felt like you couldn't talk to me about it, who would you talk to? And it was always her best friend's mom down the street, because when she's little, I could control who she was with, and I vetted, I looked after that. And so I always taught her, if you feel like you can't tell me or you can't tell Daddy, go tell Miss Carol. Because she'll look after you. So not only did I say, tell us if something happens, even if you think we won't like it, go ahead and tell us. And if you feel like you can't tell me, because sometimes kids protect the parents.
Sometimes.
Just if a child's had something bad happen to them and they don't go tell mom and daddy, it doesn't necessarily mean mom and daddy did it. It might mean, oh, my mom would be crushed. I can't let her know this. Or she'd be so disappointed in me. I shouldn't have ridden my bicycle down to the creek and got my foot cut on an oyster shell. That's a real thing that happened at our house. And how the kids brought her home, and so we had to fix that foot. But if they can't tell us, go tell somebody, give them, because you get a chance to influence who they think they can tell. If they tell you, well, Miss Carol or Miss Vicky down the street or whatever, it's like, okay, that's a really good person for her to tell. So we have a chance, like you were saying, to build in bumpers. One of the interviews I did this week was in an organization where they have the kids in their care identify a trusted adult in their organization that they can talk to. If they feel like they can't come to administration, they have that person, and they have to write the person's name down.
That's beautiful.
So systemically, we want to build in backup.
That's an organization in Bermuda, I might want to add.
It is.
Our own people. That's an organization in Bermuda that has that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I copied it from him to share with y'all. We want to build in backup plans with our kids.
Yes.
Because they'll protect us. Kids will protect the people they love the most from something ugly.
Recognizing that there is so much value in talking, because you have the ability to process your thoughts, everything sounds right in your own head.
Yeah.
Until you start getting it out and seeing it, right?
Well, one of the challenges we have in Bermuda is we're such a small community, and we still have not reduced that stigma of needing help.
Yeah.
So how do you get somebody who is struggling with a substance abuse or alcohol or an addiction to make that first brave step? Especially in a Bermuda community.
Sometimes it's not the person that's drinking and drugging. It's the family. Because the family have the collateral damage. The people that love the person that's doing the drugging and drinking are hurting.
Yeah.
The co-workers of the person that has a drugging and drinking problem that's showing up to work late all the time, no matter what we do, they have feelings about that. It's either concern for their friend's well-being or colleagues' well-being, or it's just being really angry and wishing they'd get out of the way so they have somebody to carry their load at work.
Yeah. So it's learning how to live with somebody who's an addict.
There's the people around the people, and I worked in family medicine for 20 years. And I was on the faculty at the Medical University of South Carolina Department of Family Medicine. We trained our residents in family medicine and addictive illness disorders, and we had 3 clinics. So it got to where they would have the next woman coming in that has 3 jobs, and her back hurts, and she's got a chronic stomach ache, because the family will develop some adaptive behaviors that will cost them something too.
Yes.
And it often can be around overcompensation for what's going on with the person drinking and drugging. If it's a spouse, that balance that was once there in the relationship goes off kilter. And as the substance use continues and their functioning diminishes or decreases, the family members kind of become the buffer.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could go into a lot of details on that, and I won't because we don't have it. And the children react differently. Some kids step up to be the parentified child and help get things together and get the little kids to school. Some kids are just done with it, and they become the fussy ones that get in trouble they're acting out the family pain. And they may become the next level of substance users. And then they become the identified patient of the family. And I've had families that I work with and then send somebody to treatment, and the kid goes to treatment and the family goes to the family program, and well, by the way, daddy's got a drinking disorder too.
To kind of get to the meat and potatoes of the question, right? A lot of it is just as addiction has ripple effects into the family's recovery has ripple effects into the person with the substance use disorder, right? Wow. Where we engage in that over-functioning to compensate for those gaps, it almost creates a false reality for the person who's using the substances. It allows them to continue to prioritize using and coping with the direct consequences of their substance use. So even kind of piggybacking off that example, when we can empower and embolden a family member to prioritize themselves, that will expose the area that the person with the substance use disorder actually needs to kind of step back into.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a part of it is building up a family member's distress tolerance, their ability to tolerate their loved one in an uncomfortable circumstance and not immediately go in to help, right? To rescue. So one of the things that we've done at Pathways specifically is design community education programming focused on healthy helping. A lot of times we are very well intended. We're working with the skills that we have. We're trying to figure out how to love, how to be loyal, how to support. But a lot of our strategies are designed for someone who's also prepared to pick up what they need to pick up, someone who's equally as invested, someone who's equally as motivated. Many times a family member in addiction can't match that energy for all intents and purposes. So how do we support a family member coping? And a lot of times we run into, like I said, those issues of loyalty and identity. Who would I be if I allow them to live a life that's below our family standard, if I allow them to develop a reputation in the community as someone who's an alcoholic, we're doing a lot of family preservation, but by doing that, we're also doing addiction preservation.
Yes.
So can we build the tolerance, the distress tolerance necessary to allow the natural consequences to happen? And then figure out, okay, when this person is interested in some type of support, how I can support them in a healthy way.
Because you have to deal with the fear, right? Because there's
Absolutely.
the longer it goes on, the more the family's adapted and they're walking on eggshells and at the user's mercy. And so, but that fear just amplifies over time.
Yeah, and then
Deal with it.
And we're setting family standards with our children around tolerating intolerance. And then they take that with them into the next generation.
because like we said, similar to the child sexual abuse, you have the family rules and the family culture that start to shift to protect whatever it is.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
the same way with addiction, we have to kind of experience those shifts. And something that I just want to point out, which I think is scary sometimes to think about, is there are many aspects of our personalities that we may feel that we've intentionally developed. But in reality, they are well-crafted responses to our own trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
There are some people that would just say, oh, I'm just bullheaded, or I'm just, feisty, or I'm just,
identify and feel proud of it.
Right, exactly. They become these very solidified, identifying pieces of ourselves. But in reality, they were the coping mechanisms that we've had to double down on, right? So a part of just community education and family member engagement is giving them the opportunity to ask themselves, what are the experiences that have contributed to how you've developed your identity? The goal of a lot of the therapeutic intervention is to reveal what parts of ourselves have grown and adapted, and to give choice to, do we want to continue to do those things? How can we find ways that fill us, that still meet those deep internal needs without us having to sacrifice elements of our wellness in order to feel fulfilled?
And you're talking about the family of, or you're
Family
talking about, or the
members,
addict, or the
both.
person who
It's
suffers
both.
with addiction.
System.
It's a system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one undoubtedly impacts the other, right? Whether it's directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of family members, like I said, that are afraid to be disloyal, and their concept of loyalty is what has actually shifted around the addiction. So we're simply saying, okay, well, how else can loyalty look?
Yes.
How else can we show loyalty to a person's wellness?
Yes.
When we show loyalty through this behavior, does it actually accomplish the task that we're hoping that it accomplishes?
We've got research that supports family systems approach to addiction, which I was so delighted because I kind of looked you up when I
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I saw that y'all were family oriented with treating the whole family.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the flip side of this is true. If only the substance abuser gets help and they've gotten their dose appropriate help, they're doing great and they're ready to go home, or they're at home and they're assuming the roles that that have subsided over time with their addiction, and they're getting back into being their new self that's picked up on their old obligations, and the families hadn't gotten help. It's really hard for trust to truly be restored, because I'm not giving them the checkbook. There ain't no way he's getting the checkbook back, because they hadn't had the help they needed to do the things you've described.
Exactly.
Is to deal with, there's hurt, there's pain, there's anger, and who knows, maybe they grew up in a family situation. We don't know. The transgenerational stuff we discussed with child sexual abuse earlier that you mentioned is also true in addictions. Sometimes it just has run in, it's transgenerational, often it is. So the family member needs a chance to look at how their coping behaviors were necessary then,
yeah.
but they're not useful now. Now, not that you quit helping, but it's incremental, very slowly. The family has to repair in order, because it's hard for this person to do well, thrive, and keep going if everybody's treating him like he's going to use any minute.
Absolutely.
But it
And
also-
That's a big point.
It also might expose other issues, because when the roles change, it exposes other issues in the other family members, so they don't want it to change necessarily.
There
That's
was
a really good
payoff.
point.
There was payoff in that.
and
about that. That's a good point.
And to be honest, I think a lot of times what ends up happening as well is that the presenting client, or the person who's coming in with the substance abuse concern, is, I believe there was a term that you used earlier, but is the voice of the family's dysfunction,
Pain. The
or
family
family's
pain.
right?
Underneath everything is pain.
Exactly.
The surface is the adaptive behaviors. Underneath it is the family pain.
And I think that that is so valuable, because unfortunately, one of the realities is that there are certain families that actually prefer their loved one in addiction. So,
Predictable.
yeah,
They're
right?
also needed, right? So there's a sense of the family members are needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or sometimes the reality is that there are
Or
certain
he may not need me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would he want me if he's thriving and doing well?
Yeah.
So I got to deal with my insecurities.
But also sometimes families do exploit individuals who are using substances. That is a dynamic that exists.
Yes.
Right? So in many ways, we as addictions counselors are encouraged to kind of look at the entirety of the picture and look at, well, what is the role that this individual actually plays in the family?
Yeah.
And what does family healing look like if this is what the family as a unit wants?
Yes.
But a lot of times it is, valuable to consider that when we're identifying the problems or lack thereof, we encourage it to be a little bit of a reframe into what are the skills that this family
Yeah.
can benefit from.
Yeah.
What is this problem telling us about the areas of healing and the areas of attention that this family or this individual can benefit from.
Yeah.
And really focusing on it that way, as opposed to, a more demonized approach to, okay, well, this is just dysfunctional and it serves no purpose and it's horrible. It's kind of like there is a level of collaboration, actively or passively, that contributed
Yeah.
to where we are.
So when someone presents in whatever way for help, whether it's the family member or whether it's the identified substance abuser, they're hurting.
Yeah.
Someone in substance abuse is hurting, and they may not be ready to face it. But the family, oftentimes family will talk to a best friend or something. So if your best friend is talking to you about an addiction problem, you're their safe place. They
Yeah.
chose you to talk to.
Yeah.
Encourage them. If you're watching this, encourage them to call
Yeah.
her,
It-
to call
it
her,
is,
to
and-
call these places and get help
Yeah.
from folks who know how to
Yeah.
provide help.
And it's okay to get help.
Yeah.
It's okay
Absolutely.
to, you're giving yourself a gift. We need to invest in Pathways Bermuda. We need to invest in our families. That's what we do when we invest in a charity like Pathways Bermuda. We're investing in the health of our community.
Absolutely.
And so tell us how, tell the audience how families can reach you and give information on Pathways Bermuda, please.
Absolutely, please. So one of the things that I will say is we have done some extraordinary work with a young woman in Bermuda, and we've completely revamped our website. And we've done that with the intention of that being just an immediately accessible option for a lot of people. The reason why I bring up the website is because there is a feature on it. It's a contact us. And you can simply put in your email address, your number if you wish. You don't even have to necessarily put in your name. But there's an option where it says referring myself or I'm asking for support. And then you can write a little note, and that comes directly to our email.
That's awesome.
And since we've implemented that, we've seen significantly more people reaching out. Because sometimes picking up the phone is scary.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to pick up the phone, talk to a stranger and say, hey, I think I have a drinking problem. I don't even know you.
If I know them, right?
Right? Exactly. So our website, and specifically through that Contact Us feature, if the words feel too difficult to say, type it out. Telephone number, 236-0823. And like I said, I would encourage, because when you give us a call, what we actually do is we invite you to come and have a sit down with us. And a part of that is our trauma-informed approach, right? We want people to see who they're interacting with, to feel the energy, right? We encourage you to come and sit down and have a cup of tea with us, have a cup of coffee with us, ask us whatever questions you want, take a walk throughout our building, and us give you an idea of what the next steps are. So if you're someone that, and I think this is also an important feature, if you're someone who maybe you don't have a full out addiction, right? Maybe you're just drinking a little bit more wine than you intended, right? You don't have to have a full-blown addiction, and it doesn't have to be causing a lot of problems. You can simply say, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about my substance use. Or maybe I'm concerned because I started drinking more since this person passed away, or whatever the case may be. You can come in that exploration phase and have a chat with us.
That's phenomenal.
Right?
That's phenomenal.
So that is something that we hold dearly, and then also slightly controversial depending on who you ask, but we also take a harm reduction approach to addictions counseling as well, because
What does that mean?
So what that basically means is for persons who are not prepared to consider complete abstinence approaches, we look to identify the imminent risks or harm associated with their substance use and navigate around those pieces.
Some folks, like a lot of college kids, will drink a lot and have bad outcomes.
Yeah.
And then they become a senior and they're looking for jobs and got to get a suit and go interview. And they put that behavior beside. That's called substance abuse. Substance dependence is when I'm dependent on this drug. And then there are other college kids that drink like some college kids, and abusively. And they put on their tie and suit and they apply for jobs and they get nice jobs. And they keep drinking. And they keep drinking. That's addiction.
Yeah.
Continued use in spite of adverse consequences with regards to my health, my job, my family, legal system, it's problems at work. There's problems related to use. So some folks may have an abuse problem versus a dependence problem. And if someone with an abuse problem calls you and wants some help and they engage with you, it'll work for them.
Yeah.
But if it's someone with a substance dependence problem and they pursue that route, that will self-identify in time.
Yeah.
And they'll have a relationship with you and be
what
less
that looks like.
uncomfortable furthering their relationship. So this is a beautiful model.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, sorry, just
Great
wanted to
work.
clarify. Website pathways.bm. I was quite off.
Pathways
My apologies.
Bermuda?
Yes.
So Pathways, www.
No, pathways.bm.
Oh, just pathways.bm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Google it,
Yeah.
put it Microsoft Edge, whatever you need to do.
Yes.
Chat GTP. Is
Yeah.
that what it's called? Chat GTP?
Yeah.
Pathways.bm. So
Yes.
BM Bermuda, pathways.bm. So,
Thank
you
you
know,
for that. Or give us a call. Myself or Rakisha, we would love to just sit down and have a chat.
yeah.
Family member or someone that's interested.
So the family members, if it's my child or my
100%.
spouse, I can call you and we can sit
Give
and
us
have
a
chat
call.
guide me.
And it's
100.
confidential.
Oh, 100% discreet, compassionate care. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because we are located on 61 Vermont Road, which is right before the intersection between, I say, Collectors Hill and Middle Road.
Yes.
That doesn't always work though. But with that being said, even the way that our building is designed, there's multiple entrances and exits. There's parking in the back. Our driveway is pretty much off the beaten path a bit.
Yes.
So even if there are concerns about confidentiality, recognizing that we have a building where, it's not immediately in public gaze.
Yes.
And there are secure ways to have you engage. And we also do evening sessions. We do sessions virtually through our secure platform. So we've
There
done
you
a
go,
lot
Bermuda.
to make sure that we're
Yes.
showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's called accessibility.
Hey, let me tell you.
Yeah. And no, that's really important. And, personally, my hope is that we can reduce not only the stigma of child sexual abuse, but the stigma of addiction.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
okay. It's okay. And on behalf of SCARS, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hancock, always here to give us your wisdom. And Martha, thank you for all the support that you provide, Darkness to Light and SCARS. And Camille, thank you for the work that you and Vita and all of you do over there.
You're beautiful. And what you shared has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
So what we've learned this evening is that not all wounds from sexual abuse are visible. Some are carried in silence, buried beneath years of coping, surviving, and trying to move forward. This is exactly why our work in prevention is critical. Please get SCARS certified and get trained in prevention and do everything you can to learn what you can do to protect a child and put it into action. Every child deserves not just protection, but an opportunity to grow without carrying what was never theirs to hold. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Join 14,000 SCARS certified members in Bermuda, and you can help reduce the risk of childhood sexual abuse. Become an advocate and a voice for our children. Get trained, get certified. We offer community and private sessions. Visit scarsbermuda.com to register for training. You'll also find valuable information and resources on our website. Visit scarsbermuda.com. Get certified today. SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets.